What does it really take to build a profitable brand, a profitable personal brand business? Well, today, my guest and I are going to talk about brand positioning and also talk a little bit about his case study on what does it really take to build a multi-million dollar online education business that complements your brand. This is going to be a great episode. Sit back, relax, and, let's just have some fun. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Maximize Your Brand podcast. So excited that you're with us again this week. It's been quite some time since we have been together. However, we have a great episode. I'm all about building a profitable personal brand and particularly helping what I like to call midlife career professionals who have a great interest in learning how to build a profitable personal brand that replaces their corporate income. And today we have just the person to talk about this topic. His name is Olly Richards. And Olly had a series of random careers from jazz musician to English teacher before eventually starting a blog on his passion, language learning, and growing it into a $10 million online business. Now, this episode is for me as well as for you because I am so about the business building a true profitable online business. Today, he writes a newsletter at ollyrichards.co, teaching other online entrepreneurs how to scale their business to 7+ figures using story learning as a living case study. And so we are going to go ahead and bring in our guest today, Mr. Olly Richards. Olly, thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Maximize Your Brand podcast.
It is a real pleasure, man. Great to be here. Great to be speaking with you.
I am so excited about this topic because I have been on a journey myself this past year in focusing on transitioning my business more to an online-based education business. And so you are a great guest. I've interviewed you. I've also interviewed John Meese, who also talks about online education. And so I'm just trying to get all of the great nuggets and surround myself around those people who are doing great in this area or niche of business.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, let's get into it. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, I gave a brief introduction of you, but I always like my guests to go ahead and share a little bit more about themselves. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah. So as you said, like I'm someone who's changed what he's done quite a lot over the years. So I started off my career as a musician. So I was a professional jazz musician for my late teens, half my 20s, and then I eventually kind of figured out that the music lifestyle wasn't for me. And so when I was about 28 years old, I decided to change career. I did a TEFL qualification, which is where you train to become an English teacher. And then I moved all the way to Japan from the UK, where I'm from, to Japan to teach English. And I started again from scratch, age 28. I then kind of I was on the course then of developing my career as an English teacher, kind of moving into management of language schools and things like that. And so around 2011, 2012, I moved from Japan to the Middle East, and I was kind of in the middle management position there for a few years, moving from, I was in Qatar, moving to Egypt for a year. And during that time, I was getting really frustrated with the kind of work life of a middle manager. It was very bureaucratic. Everyone listening knows what this is like. And I had this real desire for some creativity. I needed to do something
Yeah.
creative. And so I decided to start writing a blog on the thing that I'd always done in the background for fun, which is learn languages. So I've learned 8 languages, and it's just always been my real passion. And so I read this book called The $100 Startup by Chris Gillibo, and it was a transformational book because it had lots of case studies of people who were making a living from their passion. And
Hmm.
there was this one example of a guy who had a language learning blog and was traveling the world living off his language learning blog. And I thought, man, I can do that. If he can do it, why can't I do it? And so I did. I just started writing a blog, and I posted one blog post every week for the best part of 2 years, just trying to teach good stuff, be as helpful as I possibly could, just doing the blogging thing. A couple of years later, 2015, my daughter was born, and we decided that we didn't want her to grow up in Cairo. We wanted to
Hmm.
go back to the UK. So I quit my job. We both quit our jobs, me and my wife. We moved back to the UK, and again started from scratch, aged 34 this time. So I had a newborn baby, no work, just had a blog. And it was kind of terrifying, to be honest with you. But it also galvanized me. So I sort of set to work, and I learned how to grow my blog into a business. I just went on a learning spree. I joined
Hmm.
these expensive masterminds. I took
Yes.
courses. And that was 2015 when I went full time on it. And then really the story of the last 8 years has been pretty wild. Just kind of growing from one step to the next, learning more, growing more, and that gets us to where we are today. And it's my main business, story learning, where the blog turned into a business where we teach languages. So if you want to learn Spanish or French, we teach you through stories. And it's a business that I'm now mostly out of. I only work a few hours a month in the business because we have a full management team, and it's a very evolved operation at this point. And so I'm kind of now starting back from the beginning again, this time starting a newsletter where I'm just teaching all the things that I've learned over the last 10 years, because
Yeah.
at the heart, I'm a teacher. That's what I do. And so I've sort of decided to make this a new shift again. And so that
Yeah.
kind of brings us to the present day.
Yeah. And so when you talk about having a passion and turning that passion into a business, I'm sure people are listening and thinking, of course they have, passions, but how do you really know that you can turn a passion into a business, especially a multi-million dollar business?
So at the root, it needs to be something that people are willing to pay for, and
Okay.
people do routinely pay for. If people pay for it and there's enough of them, then there's no reason that it can't scale to any level, really.
Mhm.
So if you just take the language industry, although when I first started my blog, I had no idea that it would turn into what it did. But I did know that people learn languages, and I did know that people pay for language lessons. They pay teachers, they pay for books, they attend expensive courses. So I didn't know that there was a demand for this. But um, but really, whenever you're considering whether a business has legs, it really just does come down to, are there people who pay to learn this, and are there plenty of them? And if their answer is yes, then you've got the potential to to make a living, at the very least
Right.
make a living, if not get rich doing that thing.
Nice, nice. So let's jump right into it. How do you start? What are the first things that one needs to start thinking about if they are the individual that I reach out to? They're in their corporate career. They have, maybe worked 10, 15, 20 years in that career, and they're ready to do something new on their own. They really take those skill sets that they have and start, building towards that online based business. What are some of the first steps that they need to consider before, making that transition?
Yeah, so I think there are two things I'd say. The first thing is that in almost every case, it's better not to jump ship immediately.
Right.
When I started my blog, I had 2 full years working on my blog while I had a full-time job.
That's good.
And this was a big deal, man, because it meant that I didn't have to make any money. Didn't care about that. Um, I wasn't making much money from my job, but it was enough to be able to say evenings and weekends, I'm just going to make a really great blog. And at the beginning, that gave me the experience of just not having any pressure at all. And I was able to build, but by the time I quit, I had 30, 40,000 people a month coming to my blog. And that turned out to be the foundation of the business. And people often say, well, it must have been so difficult or so scary at the beginning, but in reality, it wasn't, because I gave myself all the space in the world to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I hear stories of people saying, "Yeah, I'm going to quit my job and start a business," I think, no, don't do that. Just
Don't do
spend
that.
a couple of years, like keep working, and then in your free time, learn how to actually go about doing it. Because as soon as you quit, you're going to be working overtime anyway. You're going to be working full time, like 2 jobs, the equivalent of 2 jobs when you go out on your own. So you may as well just keep doing what you're doing. Dial back the hours if you have to, but then spend time learning about what it actually takes to start a business. And this brings me to the second point, which is that there are many, many ways to go about starting a business. There are many different business models. But really, the thing that we're all dealing with in the early stages of our career is a big knowledge deficit.
Mm-hmm.
There is no difference really between myself and Joe Blogs, who is considering quitting his corporate career to start something new. There's no difference in our inherent value. I have certain skills that I have to offer. For me, mostly it's about languages and it's about business. But for this person, it may well be I don't know, accounting or financial services, or whatever it may be. We both have the same monetary value in terms of what we can offer. The difference is what we know about business. And when you first start, what happens is you waste years of time because you're working from a place of ignorance. You don't know what actions are most effective. You don't know how to manage your own behavior. You don't know the importance of things like networking and relationships. You don't understand pricing properly, so you undervalue yourself. You don't spend time learning things like copywriting so you can actually make sales. We're all operating from such a knowledge deficit at the beginning that by far the most important thing is to focus on your education and learning for as long as you possibly can. And again, this is why it's so important to I think, for people to not give up their day job too soon, because the other thing that you can do with your salary is pay for your education. So when I quit my job back in 2015, I did something that funnily enough, my wife was very supportive of, but all of my friends said I was crazy, which is that I came back. I saved up about $25,000 from 3 years working in the Middle East, and I put it all on joining a private mastermind with Russell Brunson, who everyone knows from ClickFunnels. And he wasn't so well known back then. It's just almost 10 years ago. And it sounded like an extreme thing to do, but I thought to myself logically, look, if I'm gonna be successful doing this,
Right.
it's gonna be because of what I know. And if I fail, it's not gonna be from ignorance. There are people who have that knowledge, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get into a room with them because they will light the path for me. And that's pretty much exactly what ended up happening. That plus things that happened afterwards. So number one thing, take the time that you've got available to you to educate yourself about the different options.
Different options, because they present themselves. And my personal experience was that I was actually laid off my job
Right.
in 2010. So I just made the decision that I was just going to go full time. Not sure that I was ready, not sure of anything, but after about 10 years working professionally, I knew what I didn't want to go back to. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been laid off, because I don't know that I even would have even made the transition had I, stayed working.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so that's the other piece, right? So coupled with the education and the learning, you do also need to take action, and that's
Yeah.
the difference. I mean, maybe what was different for me was I had the disposition where I would learn, but I would also take action. So I would stay up evenings and weekends, and I would write those blog posts. I would make those
Mhm.
products. I would do
Right.
I would make these affiliate sales. I would send those emails. So you do have to be able to take action. I think you just have to look honestly at yourself and say, if I'm the kind of person where like the only way I'm going to take action is by burning all my bridges, well, at least you know yourself, but just you're going to be in for a
Right.
stressful couple
Right.
of years. I think most what makes the difference for most entrepreneurs is like one of the core character traits of a successful entrepreneur is the ability and willingness to take action day after day, however hard it is.
Mm.
And the people who succeed are those people, and the people who fail, or put it this way, anyone who's not able to take consistent action will not succeed. It's
Will
not
not
possible.
succeed. That's good.
It's just
That's
not
good.
possible. And so, that's the variable that maybe we can't cater for here,
Right.
or that we can't account for, is that ability to take action.
Yeah. And what's so interesting, I'm even at this stage now where last year I invested in a program to start back blogging, but blogging in a way that builds a business, not just sharing, just my thoughts on a regular basis and just
Nice.
stirring something up, but a program that really teaches you the business of blogging and how to really identify that. And so what's interesting to me though is that we're talking about blogging and you're talking about how you started a blog on languages.
Yeah.
Is it still possible to have a profitable business with a blog in 2023 now going into 2024?
Well, what is a blog? What is YouTube? What is um, a podcast? What is an email newsletter? What is packing out a conference room with guests? It's traffic.
Mm.
There are people who go around knocking on doors still. That's traffic. It's a form of traffic. There are people who, my wife, I often use this example when people get anxious about AI. I say, like, my wife still buys her clothes from mail order catalogs. So, how's AI going to disrupt that? People, there are lots of people who behave in lots of different ways. One way that people behave is to read. Yes, TikTok is huge, and the younger generation have no attention span. Yes, loads of people like to watch video. Yes, loads of people love to listen to podcasts. But there's also a lot of people who like to read. And
Mhm.
if you're a reader, then what are you reading? Twitter, perhaps? Okay, but if you're serious, you probably stay away from social media. So then what do you read? That leaves you with blogs and email newsletters. That's essentially your choice. And so I think what you have to understand is that a blog is a traffic source.
Mhm.
You can grow it with SEO and other techniques to drive huge amounts of traffic. I mean, we get over 1 million hits a month on our website,
Wow.
and it's been growing year on year since the very beginning. There are websites and blogs with far more traffic than that, and there's if anything, the more that people get obsessed by video and podcasting, the more opportunities are opened up for things that might have fallen out of, that become less trendy a little bit.
Mhm.
So as the more that I see people focusing on TikTok and YouTube, the more I think, well, great, that's good, because I'm going to continue to serve all of the readers out there.
Yeah.
And we've recently also seen a new trend of email newsletters become really popular, and that's super
Yeah.
interesting, because email newsletters have been around since the early 2000s, or even earlier, right? But they've suddenly come back in vogue in a slightly different guise. I mean, they're now what I would call an editorial newsletter. So rather than someone with a blog who also has an email list, people are now subscribing specifically for the email list for high quality publications. But I think what that shows is that email is just as powerful and just as important as it ever was. And so if email is still central and important, then people are reading their emails, they're clicking their emails, they're going to a website. So really, I think the internet's a very big place, and there are a lot of people out there, many of whom like to read. So I would say, if as it relates to blogging, if you are a writer and you can communicate well through the medium of writing, and you want to target people who also our readers, then a blog is the single best thing you can do.
Great, great, yeah. I'm enjoying learning the process and really implementing what I'm learning to hopefully start to see the traffic to my website start to build. And so I've considered my time with my job. I've decided, okay, I'm going to stay, 2 years and start building this business and start taking some action. How do I start to position the brand that I want to start?
Yeah, this is such a difficult question, but it's such a fundamental question. So let me start by telling you what we do at Story Learning, because I think it's an interesting example that people can not necessarily model, but they can take inspiration from it. So we teach languages like many different businesses do. So everyone knows Duolingo, everyone knows Rosetta Stone. There are these very big language learning companies out there. We can't compete with companies of that scale. And so what that means for us is that we need to do something that's demonstrably different. If we have a chance of someone picking us over Rosetta Stone, they have to know why they're choosing us. So we need to have a USP, a unique selling proposition. And for us specifically, we teach languages through stories. There are no other major businesses out there that do this, that say that, what we do, our thing is we teach languages through stories. This is our thing, and we shout it from the rooftops, from our YouTube channel to our blogs, our podcast. Everything is about stories. We have over 25 books that you can find in every Barnes and Noble in the US. Again, it's all stories. So what this does is, for anyone out there who's looking around for a solution to learn a language, they will stumble across us along with many other solutions. And when they find us, they will see, okay, with these guys, with story learning, I can learn languages through stories. Many people will hear that and think, so what, whatever, don't care. And they'll just go and download Duolingo. But for many people, they will see this and they'll think, learning a language through stories, that sounds different. It also sounds quite interesting because I like reading and I like stories. Oh, and also stories are how we always communicate about everything. It's what the cavemen were doing when they were drawing those pictures on the side of the caves. It's how politicians get themselves elected, by telling stories. It's fundamental to language, to humanity. So it makes sense that I can learn Spanish through stories. Let's give it a try. And so for a certain segment of people that find us, we are a very attractive proposition, because it's just different, and so it's going to speak to people. And so what we do is we very clearly differentiate ourselves from everyone else out there. And although it's not for everybody, it will be very, very appealing to a certain subset of people. And that's what we're all looking to do. If you have a business, if you're small, and that doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur starting out for the first time, or if you're a business at our scale, which is still small in the grand scheme of things, your big advantage is to be different and to be unique.
Right.
So that you offer a credible alternative to somebody else. So what everyone needs to be thinking about is, within your industry, within all the competition, how can you be different? What can you do that can give people an excuse to pay attention to what you have to offer? So it sounds really simple to say, right? And I remember when I first started taking my very first marketing courses, everyone would teach this. Like, you've got to find a niche, but not just one niche. You need to niche down 2 levels. So it's not just management consulting. It's management consulting for agricultural businesses. But it's not just that. It's management consulting for agricultural businesses in the UK, or something like that. 2 levels deep. That's always what's been taught, right? But when I first started hearing this, I was like, oh man, that makes sense. But I don't know what I want to niche down on. At the beginning, it was just me and my personal brand.
Right.
It was the Olly show, basically. And I thought, I don't want to niche down. I just want to teach the stuff that I want to teach. And so for years and years and years, I just kept doing the Olly show. And then eventually I started to realize that within my audience and my brand, what people were really relating to was the idea of stories. And so once I saw that, I realized to myself, okay, finally, I think I found this niche thing that everyone's been talking about the whole time. So we started to rebrand the business. We started to focus much more on the idea of stories. We rebranded to Story Learning. We changed the website domain to storylearning.com. And over a period of years, we shifted completely to this new name and this new method. But I always like to say that it took me over 6 years from the time that I actually started the business to actually making that change. So the moral of the story, I guess, is that you don't have to get it right from the beginning, and it's okay to take your time. And this niche can emerge over time. The key is to be on the lookout for it. And when you spot it, then to double down on it and really chase it like a dog with a bone.
Yeah. And so it takes time for it to mature. It's not this
Yeah.
social media overnight success situation, but yet you're implementing and you're taking time and understanding one, what is your true skill set? Who is the ideal client for the offer that you have? What are their pain points? Where do they spend a lot of their time? You have to identify all of these things as you're building a business. And then you have to position yourself as the expert in that particular area. Because I'm a firm believer there's really nothing new under the sun. There's a scripture that says that there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes whatever you're offering unique, one, it's yours, and nobody can do you or be you like you. While at the same time, you have this opportunity to, tweak something and put something in the market to see whether or not it's something that people want.
Yeah, and within the context of an education business, it's also interesting to understand how this can develop, because the biggest unfair advantage that, as you said, the biggest unfair advantage that everyone has when they first start is their personal brand, because no one can be you. So if you're Catherine and you teach leadership skills, the best thing you can do to start with is to be Catherine's Leadership Academy, right? Because no one else can be Catherine. And so as long as you make it so that your name and face and personal brand is at the core of what you do, then you'll get an advantage because people will know you for being you, right? So if you go and speak at a conference and someone hears you and likes you, then it's easy for them to look you up and go and work with you. So at the beginning, a personal brand makes loads and loads of sense all the way. But when you start to, if you follow through the evolution of a business, let's just say that you establish your personal brand, you're now doing, say, mid 6 figures in revenue, and you start to think, so I've got a successful, and this is what happened to me. So I've got a successful business, I'm making money. It would be quite nice not to have to work quite so hard every single day. But how can I stop? Because I'm the brand. And so what happens inevitably with a personal brand is that you end up becoming the bottleneck. Now, for people who haven't even started out yet, you'll think, oh, well, I'll worry about that when I get to it. And fair enough. That's exactly what I did. However, what's worth remembering is that if you can actually, within your niche, define a specific method for how you teach, then this is the vehicle by which you can step back and actually build a business that's bigger than yours. So if you are Catherine's Leadership Academy, it has to be Catherine who's teaching. But if instead of that, your method is teaching leadership through storytelling, for example, just because it's the most obviously the easiest example for me to reach to. I'm not suggesting that's a good idea, but let's just say it is, right? Leadership skills through storytelling. And you have the 1, 2, 3 method. Okay. So now, rather than being leadership with Catherine, it's now leadership through stories with the 1, 2, 3 method. What does that mean? It means that other facilitators can come in and deliver that method because it's structured, it has a name, it's codified. So when you can bring other people in to teach the method, that allows you to step back and actually regain either some free time, to have a life again, to start another business, or more likely to spend time actually developing the business. So how can you grow it from six figures to 7 figures, whatever it may be? So for everyone who's starting with a personal brand, it's worth just the reason it's important to know this is because it allows you to be on the lookout for methods and systems that you can start to adopt and brand,
Okay.
knowing that further down the line, that's going to be your passport off the hamster wheel and into more of an owner role rather than an operator role.
So good. So good. So I want to kind of transition into talking about your case studies, and sharing more about, what are some of the things that you learned in performing those case studies, and reading about others who, I guess, started online based businesses, or who want to start like online based business, and what made them successful.
There are so many differences and so many similarities at the same time. And one of the things that I do from time to time is that I work with other entrepreneurs who have education businesses and who want to grow, and I get to see very, very close up the things that they're good at and the things that they're bad at, the things that they are successful at, the things that they fail at. And there are lots of different aspects to this, but the thing that gives most people the biggest advantage and allows them to make the most money and to have just a nicer time of everything is audience building. So when I look at some of the most successful people that I know, they have all managed to build big audiences, and you can do this in a number of different ways. You can do this on YouTube. I work with one guy who has 250,000 odd followers on Twitter. Someone else who teaches copywriting and is kind of known as one of the major copywriters in the email space. There's someone else who's built her entire B2B business from the speaking circuit. But what's unique about all of these people is that they've built this audience and they're able to then transition it over to a business. And that's what gives them their lead flow and what allows them to sell. And so it's very striking, because sometimes you get people who are product first, and they say, right, I'm going to create an academy, or I'm going to create an online course, or I'm going to create I'm going to start offering such and such consulting services. And so they quit their job and they launch on day one, and then immediately then they've got a marketing challenge. Like, right, where do I get people from? And that's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
If you've just started with a product, it's incredibly difficult then to go out and find people because you haven't proven anything yet. You don't know if the thing that you're offering anyone wants. The fantastic thing about building an audience first is that you get to test things as you go. So if you build a big social media following, for example, when it's time to release your first product, there are loads of different ways to validate that. You can have an interest list, you can pre-sell it, you can make up something quick over the weekend and just and sell it to see whether people like it or not. You get this instant validation from your audience, and this tells you straight away that you've got this product market fit. And with this really quick feedback loop, then you're able to move on to the next thing, build more, do the same. And once you do build an audience, it's even easier to build a bigger audience because you just need to do more of the same. And so that is one of the things that is that's most powerful. And so, we were talking earlier about the idea of taking the time to learn before you quit your job. The kind of parallel track to that, which is what I did, which I was describing with my blog earlier, is actually to spend that time building an audience first. Because if you build that audience first, then you're going to find it so much easier to launch a business on the back of that. So what a lot of people do when they're transitioning from corporate into online business is they go quite heavy on social media. So you get a lot of people who tweet, build big Twitter followings. LinkedIn is also really big. especially for more B2B professional stuff. So, for example, a couple of the people, in fact, I think almost all of the people that I work with currently, whether or not they whether LinkedIn is their main thing, they all have a LinkedIn presence. And for many of them, they have, 20, 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. And that's their main traffic source to their website. It's the main source for their customers. It's really huge. So so that's the first thing that I see in common among people who are able to drive, multi six-figure businesses as essentially a solopreneur.
Yeah. Wow. So LinkedIn is a powerful tool people don't talk about a lot.
Yeah. Are you a big social media guy?
I am. I am on all of the platforms, but I can't admit that I'm not mastered any of them.
Yeah. So this is actually the second point, which is that I was going to mention. So you've nicely segued that for me. So when I meet entrepreneurs, for the most part, they already have established businesses. So I tend not to work with people who are kind of very, very early stage. And what's interesting about people when they have established their business is that they tend to make very predictable mistakes after that point. And so the predictable path of let's say you have someone who has started in the way that I've described. So they've built a big following either on their blog or on LinkedIn or something like that. They're making low six figures a year, and they feel like they can't believe it. They're super happy. I'm making money. I've quit my job. I can't believe I've done this. I'm really proud. But at the same time, I'm kind of scared because what happens if LinkedIn changes its algorithm and I lose all of my contacts? What happens if something changes? If the internet breaks and all of my traffic dries up. So what do? They get scared and they start to make stuff left, right, and center. So they go from one traffic source, say LinkedIn, to 5 things. So now they add a YouTube channel and a podcast and Twitter and a blog, and before they know it, they've got to post content in 5 different places. They go on a crash product making course. They build like 4 or 5 products over the course of the year. So what happens is then after another year or two, they end up with like 4 or 5 traffic sources, a whole bunch of products, and business becomes completely chaotic. Nothing is being done well. Customers aren't being looked after. All your different marketing funnels are ineffective because it's impossible to do that much volume well.
Right.
And so often when I meet business owners who get to kind of mid or high 6 figures, actually the biggest blockage of all, the thing that's actually stopping them scale to 7 figures and beyond, is that they have too much complexity and too much chaos in the business. So in order to actually open up routes for scale, they have to strip back loads and loads of things, often stop doing different traffic sources, really streamline their products so that one product leads neatly to the next, and you're not selling courses to like 3 different avatars all the time. And so the mistake in this case, once you've got traction, is then to diversify. Okay. For me, and this is one of the things I write about in the case study, I am very against diversifying at all before you're at least $1 million in revenue, because you can get to $1 million in revenue pretty straightforwardly, not easily, but straightforwardly, with one traffic source and one product suite. At most, 2 traffic sources and one product suite. If your thing is successful, if you've got product market fit, if people want the stuff that you've built, then with one traffic source, you can scale that to $1 million. The problem is, so you ask, well, why don't people do that? And the reason is that when the going gets tough, people don't put in the good work to actually get better at that thing. Alex Hormozy talks about this all the time, where often when the going gets tough and you plateau in your business, very, very often the best thing to do is more of what you're currently doing. And so in this case, if you've got let's say you've got LinkedIn and a certification program. Cool. You've plateaued at $500,000 in revenue. What's the best thing to do? Start a new traffic source? No. Figure out how to grow your LinkedIn further. Educate yourself. Keep learning. Figure out the next step, the thing that you don't know. And yes, this is where it gets difficult. It gets hard at this point because now you're operating in the top 0.1% of people on LinkedIn. But the great thing about social media and the internet is that traffic sources are essentially unlimited. So if you can focus down on unblocking that traffic source, grow bigger, and then maybe figure out how to, maybe there's some repositioning to do on your product, or there's some tweaking on the pricing to do. Maybe there are extra tiers that you can add. But with that traffic source and that product, you should be able to get up to 7 figures. And so it's about focusing down on the things that are working and not diversifying when things get tough.
I like that word focus. I learned from John Lee Dumas. Follow one course until success.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's such a great acronym.
Yeah. Follow one
But
course until
it's
success.
one of those things, man. It's so easy to say, and we all understand it. But 5 years down the line, when you built a successful business and you find yourself there, it's so easy to forget. Because there's a million excuses. There's always a reason why, right? There's always a reason why not. But the truth is that the people who really succeed quickly, they stay brutally focused on the task at hand.
Yeah. And, and that's a message for me because I have a tendency to be, have the podcast, and I just recently started doing weekly YouTubes, and I have my social media and I'm, do speaking and getting into affiliate marketing. And I'm like, okay, Markeith, you have to, I think they all can work in tangent, but I need to pick the one that I can create the $500,000, $1 million business in, and then add as I grow.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because if you, for example, take YouTube, right? I really enjoy doing YouTube. I haven't got huge channels, but our story learning language channel is about 400,000 subscribers at the moment. I started a new channel for my business stuff that you can find if you search Olly Richards on YouTube. But the thing is with YouTube is, you take a look around, there are many examples of people with hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers, all the traffic you could possibly desire, you can get from
making any
YouTube.
money.
Oh, well, that's a different story. So, I mean, some of them are, many of them are. But my point was, if the game you're playing is traffic, which it sounds like you are, right, with starting these new content platforms. If traffic is the game, YouTube the gods of YouTube can bring you all the traffic you could possibly desire. But you got to focus.
You got to focus in.
You got to focus. Yeah.
Got to focus in. Focus in, Markeith. Yes. Which is one of the reasons why I haven't had as many episodes towards the latter part of this year on the podcast, because I'm shifting my focus. And I tell my clients all the time, you are telling yourself a lie if you believe you're multitasking, because we can't really multitask.
Yeah.
I think I learned some time ago, it was called time splicing. You're really stopping one thing to do something else, to stop that thing to do something else. And you're slowing yourself down in a sense. As someone who was a former track athlete, both in high school and in college, one of the things that we had to learn was that paying attention to the runner next to you slows you down.
Okay. Yeah, and what a discipline that must be as well, to actually, when you're in the heat of the race, to stay that focused. It's amazing. I often think about that, actually, that I felt like I had the ability to focus so much more when I was like, 20, 21. Then I try a lot harder these days. I'm 42. But that's the thing. Now, but on the topic of content, what's interesting is that one thing, this all comes down to knowing the game that you're playing, right? So on the strategic side of it, if traffic is the problem to be solved, the problem to be worked, then okay, fine. What's it going to be? And there are many options, but if it's going to be YouTube, it's like, well, let's do YouTube. Let's take courses on YouTube. Let's get a consultant in. Let's really study. Let's figure out, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The answers are all out there. So let's go and find the people with the answers and then figure it out. But it also pays to know the purpose behind the content that you are choosing, right? So a lot of people that I encounter will say something like, yeah, well, I want to grow my traffic, so I started a podcast. And I'm like, okay, now what's the purpose of a podcast? The main purpose of a podcast for me is to create intimacy, because podcasting is the most intimate brand that there is. Growing a podcast to be big is incredibly hard. Most people don't do it.
It's very hard.
It's easy, like you can find examples, but they're the exceptions that prove the rule. Most podcasts have very, very low traffic, but if let's say that you're already getting a ton of traffic from YouTube, okay, then or a blog, and let's say you sell high ticket items like coaching or consulting. What do you need in order to sell high ticket items? Intimacy. So you're getting traffic from YouTube and from your blog, and that's great. That gives you authority. But what you're perhaps lacking is intimacy. So you're thinking, right, I need authority and intimacy in order to sell high ticket products. I've got the authority from the YouTube and the blog, but what I really need now is intimacy. I need people to listen to me for an hour at a time so they start to really understand my message, believe me, trust me, because that's when a sale becomes possible. And so a podcast can be the perfect thing to add into your business if what you need to do is build trust in order to make more sales. And traffic can be almost irrelevant in that scenario. If you've got enough traffic, then adding the podcast on can actually be something that supercharges your sales because you're adding in that missing element. So every piece of content has its purpose. When I meet people who are really big on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn, I tell them start an email newsletter because you already know how to write. So let's double down on that. Let's write, but let's write more long form stuff so you can build authority because no one believes you if you're on Twitter. Like you're just lost in the sea. Yeah. But if you write a long form email newsletter where you teach a bunch of stuff, now people believe you. So now you have authority and now you can sell. Yeah. So every different medium has its own purpose as well.
So many moving parts. We could go a whole nother hour, but some great content here and great pieces to, pull together and first, identifying and knowing what is your skill set? What is it that you want to do? Being clear on that. But then you spoke to the idea of building community and audience before creating the product, right? Because you don't know really what people want, need, what their pain points are, what it is that you're solving for them. So building that community is so important. And then testing out what you have to offer with that community that you are building. I believe that the community part may be the most difficult part because you're wanting to resonate with individuals who resonate with your messaging, with your brand, with your potential offers. And so that is a key part, even for me, building a community around the business so that I have someone to sell something to. Yeah.
Community, I think there are certain people who are very natural at it and certain people who are not. I am not a natural community person because my character type, my personality type is always more new, novelty. Like, so I don't do well coming back to the same thing all the time. And a lot of entrepreneurs I know have that problem. They just don't do well at slowing down and connecting with the same group of people over and over. Right. This is why I would never create a membership site. I know it's not right for me. For other people, it's perfect for. But I think, when you're first getting started and you really want to connect with people, understand your audience, understand their pains, their problems, their struggles, then like you say, a community is it may be the most natural thing for you at the beginning, which is good because it's a really, really quick way to learn.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the end here, but I'd love for you to share more about how people can learn more about you, learn more about your business and your websites where we can, possibly become customers, clients, or what you have going on that's coming up, just so that we can be aware of the things that you have going on.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, so the best thing to do if you want to hear more from me is to sign up to my email newsletter at ollyrichards.co, completely free. I send out, for the most part, one very long form email every week, which dives into all kinds of topics around entrepreneurship. You can also, when you do sign up to the newsletter, you'll get a free copy of my 118 page. It's massive, this thing, but people seem to really like it. A case study. And inside that, you'll learn all about the nuts and bolts of how a successful online business actually operates. So again, from the kind of from the education piece, it's really, 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 really helpful just to illuminate the pathway a little bit for you. So that's all at ollyrichards.co. You can find my videos on YouTube as well. Just search for Olly Richards there. And if you want to check out my language business and just take a little look around and see how it works, then you can go to storylearning.com and everything's there.
Awesome. Well, Olly, thank you for joining for this episode of the
Pleasure.
Maximize Your Brand podcast. For those of you who are joining for the first time, listening for the first time, we thank you for tuning in. Let us know by leaving us a rating or review on iTunes and letting us know about this episode. Please do subscribe also to the podcast. If you are listening on any of the platforms, all you have to do is find us at Maximize Your Brand on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and you can listen to over 200 episodes that I have there already for you. I'm always excited to share with you each and every week. If you're interested in growing your own personal brand and learning how to monetize that, I have a free gift where you can grab this checklist, the 7 stages to shift your brand checklist. All you have to do is text maximize to 1-877-640-5632, and it's just a quick PDF that you can pick up. But until next time, just remember this: always shoot for the top, because it's the bottom that's overcrowded. Take care.